Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name's Nolan. Here's what experience taught me. Every man has a point where enough stops being a feeling and becomes a decision. It builds, and it builds, until one ordinary day turns into the day. For me, that moment landed when my girlfriend, Selena, took a girls' trip without telling me at all. That was the last straw. She never thought I'd actually leave. She assumed I'd keep absorbing it the way I had for months. If that sounds extreme, it might be. If this had been the first issue. It wasn't. Not even close. So, to make sense of how I got there, and why I chose to walk without another warning, let's wind it back to where the slope began. This didn't happen overnight. Here's the whole story. Selena and I were together a little over 5 years. From early on, there was one thing I was completely upfront about. I had no interest in becoming legally married. It wasn't fear of commitment, the usual assumption people throw out. It was deeper. I've seen too many endings turn uglier the moment courts, filings, attorneys, and procedural battles enter the room. When relationships die, that machinery often makes the grief louder and longer. I didn't want that third-party interference in my private life. If a relationship reached its end, I wanted it to end with dignity, not court summons and property combat. At first, Selena pushed a little. She asked questions. She tried the reasonable angles. Commitment, security, the future. When it became clear I wasn't shifting, she didn't turn it into trench warfare. Eventually, she told me something that mattered to me for a long time. She said she loved me and wouldn't lose me over legal paperwork. What counted was that we loved each other and were building something that felt real. In her words, a piece of paper isn't going to define our relationship. I respected that. I loved her for meeting me where I was. And Selena, people would call her the full package beautiful for sure, but also sharp and socially fluent. She drew people in from every direction, always planning something, always in motion, always with her own orbit of projects and friends. To me, we were strong, different views in some places, aligned in affection. At least, that's what I believed at the beginning. Around the 3-year mark, Selena hit a rough patch in her career between jobs and trying to pivot to something new. The uncertainty wore on her. She wasn't someone who liked asking for help, but it was obvious she needed stability and room to land on her feet. By then, we had time invested, and I felt responsible in the healthy way, so I suggested we move in together. My place wasn't great, for 2 space was not on our side, so we went looking as a team and signed a lease on a bigger apartment with both names on the line. Co-living meant co-managing. We started blending certain expenses, nothing hyper-formal, but patterns set themselves. I naturally slid into the planner's chair. Selena stayed spontaneous. Going with the flow is fun until bills and calendars ask for structure. I became the person making sure the essentials weren't missed and the numbers didn't drift. I didn't mind. It felt like balance. She brought movement. I brought rails. On the surface, we looked good. We felt like a proper couple building side by side. But living together has a way of removing the blur. I started noticing things I'd been ignoring. I told myself we were just adjusting. I gave the benefit of the doubt so often it became a reflex. When we weren't under the same roof, it was easy to overlook pieces. If she went out with friends or took a weekend away, I could shrug. But once we shared a home, the gaps became louder. I'm not the controlling type. I wasn't ordering lifestyle rewrites, but once we chose cohabitation, I expected priorities to shift a little, to reflect that we were building together. With Selena, it felt like she never truly left the bachelorette tempo. Every weekend had plans, parties, girls' nights, random out-of-town getaways. People blow off steam. I get it. I'm not anti-fun. But this wasn't occasional. It was a pattern nearly every weekend. At first, I let it ride. Over time, it started grinding on me. There's a difference between being in a relationship and living like you're single while someone else shares your address. One morning, I decided to say something. I called and told her, "Look, I know we're not married, but this is still a committed relationship. I'm not comfortable with how often you're out partying or away on girls' weekends. It doesn't feel right." If we were going to work, communication had to exist. To her credit, she didn't explode. She listened, paused, and said she didn't realize it bothered me that much. In her view, it wasn't that serious, but if it was affecting me, she'd put some control on it. She told me she loved me and didn't want me feeling like I came second to a good time. I believed her. I thought, okay, first real bump, handled like adults. For a while, I felt reassured. We found a rhythm. Little misunderstandings, nothing major. It wasn't perfect, but it felt steady enough to last. The thing about peace is that sometimes it's the quiet right before the weather changes. A little over 2 years into that new phase, the slide returned. The hinge for me was our joint account. Ever since moving in, we'd set up shared finances to a reasonable degree, personal accounts for each, plus a joint account for rent, groceries, bills, the standard list. We agreed on transparency. One end-of-month review, I spotted something off. Transactions from an area that didn't match her stated plan to visit family for the weekend. Not near where she said she'd be. Not aligned with the story. I didn't confront her then. Letting it pass didn't calm my head. The longer I sat with it, the more it gnawed. Suspicion grew roots. One Saturday, I had the day off. Selena invited a couple of friends over normal for us. They gathered in the living room while I was in the bedroom with the door cracked. Their conversation drifted in laughs, talk about dating apps and relationships. Then I heard Selena say, "Honestly, I'm basically single." I froze. Laughter followed. Maybe a joke to them. It wasn't a joke to me. I didn't make a scene. Her friend stayed another hour and left. When she came into the bedroom, I asked, calm and straight, "What did you mean when you said you're basically single?" She rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive lately." That told me everything I needed to know about how she was framing us. After that, conversations turned brittle. No matter how carefully I chose words or how calm I stayed, any concern flipped into a blow-up. Bring up a pattern? Suddenly I was attacking her. Try to explain? I was being dramatic. Sometimes she'd invert the whole thing so it looked like I was the problem for noticing. There was no resolution, just tension that kept residency. Worse, the more we fought, the more she did the exact things we had already addressed, as if to prove a point or punish me for speaking up. If I said disappearing for hours with no heads up wasn't okay, the next week she'd leave with 0 word and stay out longer. If I said partying every weekend was too much, she'd stay out even later. It felt like a dare. How far could she push before I finally dropped the rope? Eventually, I stopped bringing things up. I was tired. Talking didn't move anything. Adult conversations didn't change outcomes. I decided to hold it in, thinking maybe if I stopped pushing, she'd see the effort and meet me halfway. That was a mistake. Silence didn't keep the peace. It just made me invisible. She had more room to move however she wanted without consequence. Some nights, she didn't come home. I'd sit there wondering if she was okay or who she was with. When I asked later, I'd get vagueness. Stayed at a friend's, or it was too late to drive back. Never a heads up, never consideration. This wasn't about control. I didn't need to track her. I needed respect, communication, baseline courtesy. The quieter I got, the more I disappeared in the house I paid for. One Tuesday, I came home from work to a quiet place. At first, nothing strange traffic happens. Selena usually beat me home by an hour, but okay. I changed, grabbed a drink and waited. 30 minutes. Nothing. Another 30. Still nothing. I texted, "Where are you?" 30 minutes later, she finally responded. She'd taken leave from work for a girls' trip. It slipped her mind to tell me because I was busy. The logic collapsed on contact. The timing, the tone, the excuse, none of it held. More than that, it felt disrespectful. How do you forget to mention a trip to the person you live with and share a life with? That was it for me. It clicked crystal clear. This is who she is, and this is not a life I want. I didn't want another month, another week, honestly, not another day trying to convince someone I mattered in my own home. I took a breath and sent one message back. I won't be here when you get back. I wish you the life you're chasing, but I won't be waiting as a backup plan, she replied, confused. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I'd already said everything that needed saying. For once, I didn't let it become another loop of emotional tug-of-war. That night, I packed everything I owned, anything with my name, my energy. I didn't leave a single anchor behind for her to tug later. By morning, I had moved out. I went straight to the leasing office and filed to take my name off the lease. I cut off contact, blocked her everywhere. She tried, of course. A new number popped up that week. You're really just leaving? Then, we can talk. I meant what I'd said. I didn't respond. A few days later, the date she was due back, my phone buzzed from another new number. I answered before I realized it was her. The moment I heard the voice, I ended the call. She called back. I let it ring. Again. Again. Then texts from that same number. You're really just leaving? We can talk about it. I looked at the screen. I felt done. Everything I had to say, I'd already said. I blocked the number and finished my evening. And that's where I am now. Some will ask why I didn't offer a final conversation, a neatly labeled closure. Here's what I'll say. People mistake silence for cruelty, when sometimes it's the kindest way to choose peace. If someone shows you, again and again, that your peace doesn't matter, eventually you pick it for yourself, quietly. So what do you think? Was I wrong to leave like that? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments.